Hi, welcome to the Property Show. I'm Jayashree Kurup, I'm editor MBTV, and today we're talking about the property buyers. A lot of property buyers who have not had their properties delivered to them, their units they're still waiting for. We see a lot of stress, and you can see that the COVID situation has not helped. Can RERA find out of the box solutions? It's a discussion that we are having with all stakeholders in the industry, and RERA being such a critical part of it, we've chosen two of our finest RERA officials, Mr. Rajive Kumar, Chairman UP RERA, and Mr. Anthony Disa, Chairman MP RERA. They work within the framework of the law, but within the framework of the law, are there out-of-the-box solutions? That's the point we're discussing today. So I'm going to place something on the table. We see that consumers have struggled. Salaries have been cut. Many have lost jobs. If not jobs, it is a furlough that they've been put on. So there is a stress as far as the finance is concerned. Family finances are concerned. The second thing is that the moratorium that has been given by the banks is due to end at the end of August. After which, from 1st September, is the financial situation hunky-dory? Probably not. In such a situation, does the consumer need a helping hand? And if so, what can the RERAs do? Mr. Anthony Disa, would you like to start?
Okay. Thank you, Jayashree. On this particular issue, Jayashree, I think what we need to be able to do is to differentiate between installments that the consumer has to pay to his bank because of a loan taken, or installments that are due to be paid directly to the builder, right? Now, if because of COVID, the project is taking a little longer to complete, the builder is also going to get money connected with the stage of building, right? So even whether the consumer is to pay the builder directly, then of course, no installments become due immediately. Even if the consumer is paying through the bank also will not be giving any additional installments to the builder because that is linked to progress in the project. But whatever the bank has given already, which one assumes the bank has been doing its duty, or the bank or the financial institution, and only paid that portion of the loan which is related to progress on the ground, then the load of the loan on the consumer too is not for the whole loan amount, but only that amount which has been paid back. Of course, calculations are made as per EMI, right? So, but EMI always assumes when it is calculated that the entire loan will be paid out over a certain prefixed period decided when the loan was taken. Now that clearly is not happening. So just like you have a kind of a reassessment of loans which banks give out to other institutions, perhaps what banks can do is, while continuing with EMI, the EMI can be reduced if the banks redraft their loan, knowing now that the loan which originally was intended to be paid out, say, over 3 years, is now going to be paid out over 5 years or whatever. I'm just giving numbers out of the air. And so the EMI load can come down on the consumer. But the EMI itself will have to be paid, because if the consumer doesn't do that and he only looks for moratorium, the moratorium is not coming free of charge. The moratorium is coming with interest. So he is only, and there was a calculation in some newspaper saying that the moratorium should be taken only in the direst of circumstances. Otherwise, it is better for a consumer to continue paying rather than avail of the moratorium, because the interest load will be larger. So this is just to react immediately to what you said. Okay.
I'm going to take that one step further, because when we spoke about this issue very early on in just after the lockdown, at that point of time, the consumer was only worried about, I need cash in hand. Today, a lot of the home buyers have actually faced COVID. They are either by themselves or through their family, and face the medical expenses. So the consumers who haven't got their houses, maybe staying on rent, have undertaken medical expenses, which is rather steep. And after that, now when the moratorium, let's assume that they took moratorium and decided to keep a little cash in hand for themselves for the 3 months. Now there is a buildup of the interest rate, and now when they have to repay between a, in a stress situation, if I have to pay a rent or an EMI or both, I would say rent nahi dunga to ghar se bahar kar denge. EMI mera CIBIL kharab hoga. I'll see what I can do to sort it out. And we feel that there is a large percentage of consumers who are facing this dilemma. Mr. Rajive Kumar, you come from, you are handling a market which has a lot of these kind of cases. What is your reading on the ground?
I think I would say that the point which Mr. Disa has mentioned, uh, maybe step down in EMI in effect, that's something which the banks can surely consider, and they should. Apart from that, you see, I think our main problem stems from the delayed projects, as far as especially the NCR is concerned. And there are a couple of things which in extreme cases is already uh, being taken up by some of the more progressive builders. As far as the law is concerned, it provides that if there is a delay, then the delayed amount can be paid on a monthly basis. That is what Section 18 provisions are. But liquidity is a crunch for everybody at this moment. So what some of the builders are doing is that they are looking at property swap, which means that if there is another property or a builder which has a ready-made inventory, then immediately you can offer that to a buyer whose property itself is going to take a while. So that immediately takes the issues relating to rent out of the picture. There are some more people who are saying that we would offer rent-free accommodation for some of the buyers if they wish to shift, or at least in some cases also give equivalent amount of rent so that they can continue staying, but whatever is their apartment's equivalent rent today, they can pay. The other option which is being proposed is that we straight away pay them the rent. So that would to certain extent cushion as far as their immediate rent issues are concerned. But it's very subjective because some people have their families and their children and they would not like to immediately shift out. And there are other considerations also, whether all the facilities would be available where they're going to shift. But the important issue is that even from an immediate perspective as well as from a medium-term perspective, that there is a need for enhancing the liquidity with the builders so that A, they are able to complete their projects quickly, and B, that which require such help, they are in a position to help them out. So I think we need a combination of all this together.
So we'll pick up the three instances that you spoke about. If there is a rent free accommodation that can be provided, that would actually ease the situation in a lot of cases. Even if rent is paid to them, it would take the pressure off them, and they, it's a temporary phase. Until the COVID situation eases, it's a temporary phase. But as far as the swap deals go, sir, we studied that and we did a full show around that. What we have realized is right now what the swap deals that are being offered, if it is by the aggregators are saying that what you've paid so far, the cost of the unit that you picked up in say 2009 or 2010, that will be the base rate that will be considered. And on that, what you've paid, that comes in, but the consumers paid a lot of EMI. 10 years is a lot of time. They've paid the EMIs, pre-EMIs, which is not going to be considered. It is wiped out. Now, that is a very tough thing for consumers to stomach. The second thing is that if the private aggregator, you go and say that here's what I've paid, can I swap? They're asking them to take a property that is 3 times the amount that they've paid.
Right.
Suppose you paid only 20 lakhs, it's fine. You can pick up a property for 60 lakhs. Suppose you paid 90 lakhs. Can you afford to pay 3 times the amount because you paid 90% of the cost? That is where the consumers are definitely feeling the stress.
Correct.
So, I would like to respond.
So I think the fact is that you would recall that some time ago, a comment was made by Honorable Railways Minister that the promoters need to look at pairing their expectation of what margins are available to them. And there is a need to look at a price correction. Now, the point which you are making is actually in a way related, because some of the buyers do say that they will not be able to afford anything extra. Whatever they have paid, give us a reasonable unit within that price, what they have already done. And it might mean a slight lowering of what originally they thought. But the builders also need to be very proactive in it by making a deal which is a win-win for both, rather than trying to look at margins in this scenario.
Sir, can RERA be the agency that can bring the two sides together? We are warring. Even now, the two sides are warring, right? Neither is stepping down. The consumer says, I've waited long enough, I've been cheated. And the developer says that I'm giving you a घर तो दे रहा हूँ, अभी लेना हो तो लो, नहीं तो देखो फिर wait करो. You know, that's the attitude in many cases. And somewhere I find that the RERA resolution forums do seem to be.
Jayashree, what exactly was your last sentence? The RERA resolution forum, and then I didn't catch the last 3 words.
Seem to be helping, bring the two.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just going to say, of course, RERA can be the forum, and RERA is, because basically, even a property swap is actually what? It's a compromise. It's a samjhauta that is happening between the two parties, right? And RERA, I think all RERAs have always encouraged, whether through a formal structure like in Maharashtra, where they have these mediation things, or even an informal structure like we have in Madhya Pradesh, because we don't have that load that they have there. But we have always encouraged compromises between the two parties. The only thing we see is whether it is a fair compromise, especially when one of the parties is, maybe an LIG or an EWS person, and otherwise we only see that it's a fair thing. And if it's a fair compromise and both parties are willing to accept it, with open eyes, we record it as an order of RERA so that the compromise also gets the force of law. We don't simply say a compromise has been reached and therefore the case is shelved. No, we record the terms of the compromise and then we file the case, because then if that compromise too is not adhered to, then people can come and ask for execution or their original resolution, etc. So even in property swap, RERA can certainly play a role by seeing whether it's a fair swap. And in any case, the property swap is always optional. You see, it's not, you can't force a person to swap his property. But the point, I only want to make one small point, one important point, Jayashree, which consumers must understand, because mentally also consumers should not feel cheated. Even when we are going through this difficult period, the mental framework of a consumer also has to be looked to. The consumer should understand that the primary objective of booking a property is getting that property, not compensation. Compensation is important, but it is not the primary objective. It's something like insurance. You take insurance not with the objective of a calamity happening, that you will die. You say, in case a calamity happens, then insurance is there to take care of the situation. But your primary objective is not to allow a calamity to happen. So basically, if getting property is the primary concern, then certainly RERAs must work towards getting projects completed, right? Now, one ridiculous article came out, I will not name the person, but people must have read it, in the Economic Times, where RERAs were first criticized for coming together and forming the All India Forum of RERAs. And the second thing was, because RERAs had taken up as an important subject how to facilitate the accessing of the loan from the stress fund that Government of India has announced, the writer of the article condemned all RERAs as being pro-buy. Now, something more ridiculous and foolish I cannot, think of. After all, why was the stress fund created? To get builders to complete projects. If the project is completed, is only the builder going to benefit, or are all the stakeholders, all the allottees going to benefit? If RERA is working in whatever way it can to enable builders to access that fund, does it make RERA pro-builder? No, it makes RERA pro-project. And the project is there for both the builder and the allottee. So we need to do this. Now, whether it's pre-COVID or post-COVID, that's another matter. Post-COVID, things are complicated, you see. But there is a provision for force majeure, and RERAs have not been just accepting. Builders have been, first of all, saying demonetization is force majeure, GST is force majeure, price of sand and availability of sand is. We have been rejecting all that. We are saying no, GST, demonetization are policies of the government which are not force majeure. But that COVID is a force majeure situation. So accepting that does not make a RERA pro-builder. We have to understand that COVID is there and it is a force majeure situation. You see? Now, of course, we have to see how do we get out of this in the best way possible, and that is why we are having this discussion here. I just wanted to make that point. Sorry, Jayesh. Please continue.
I think, in fact, one of the things that we have supported is that by declaring it force majeure, at least you've kept the project alive. The projects are not going into NP. You're bringing the money back into the project to the last mile funding to complete the projects. But Mr. Rajive Kumar, I'm going to come to you. When you're talking about the property swap, I'd like to spend a little more time on that, because in the Greater Noida region, this is a distinct possibility. If one tower is completed and there are 10 units that are yet to be sold, and the consumer who's in the last tower, let's assume A to G, consumer from tower G says that you've completed tower A, or it's at least moving towards completion. Why can't I swap on with no other strings attached? I've paid this much, I've paid my interest, just change the unit number and give me this unit. Is it possible, and are you getting requests like this?
I think you are aware that we have a very active conciliation forum, which is both at Lucknow and at Greater Noida. And a lot of matters relating to the possession. And here I would like to mention that we have been very closely monitoring the filings of cases pre and post COVID. One trend which is in a way very positive is that despite the tremendous amount of stress which is being faced by the buyers, and you have started by saying that it is not only financial stress, but it is some partly because of confinement, partly because of financial stress. It is also reflected in a substantial mental stress also. But despite that, the proportion of cases being filed for possession being delivered and for refund, that actually is marginally improved rather than deteriorated, contrary to what one would have thought. So from that, though I must say that it's not a national level kind of sample, but from the state 100% data which we are monitoring, this implies that our buyers are being brave about it, and despite all the obstacles, they are still looking forward getting a house ultimately, for a home for their families and their children. Now, the conciliation forum, as you are aware, that right from filing of the complaint, we ask a person whether he would like for conciliation. But even in a lot of cases, because there are issues about, how finally the amount will be settled, etc., etc. So during the course of the proceedings, we do give time for both the parties to see whether an alternative can be offered and whether that is acceptable to the buyer. So if required, we give time. We say, okay, we are giving you a month for the next date. Please offer them what best you can and let and come back and tell us. So in quite a few cases, they come back with a settlement. A few of them, the bench also refers to these matters to the so that there is a solution. But I think it's much easier to swap within a builder if he has a couple of properties. And that kind of an exchange, though I had suggested this both to CREDAI and NAREDCO, that they should be running an exchange program or an exchange which can facilitate this swap. But I think we need to motivate them a little more.
A lot more, and I will elaborate on this a little bit, but I'll take Mr. Desa's comments also on this because this is important.
On the issue of swap, yeah, I entirely agree with with Rajiv on this. That you see, swap within builders is much better, much easier, much cleaner. But of course, options then are reduced. And swap within builders is something which we have been doing in Madhya Pradesh. But swap across builders is somewhat complicated because the builder who is letting go feels that he is losing one client completely, you see. And the builder who is receiving says that builder has benefited from the earlier, installments and the notional interest on that and all that. Why should I accept that? And that problem has become quite knotty. And unless CREDAI takes it up between its members and establishes this as a principle, it becomes a little difficult. We cannot force a builder who is, who has not made an agreement to accept those earlier paid installments at their value that it was when it was paid. So that has to be a voluntary measure, and that has not happened in Madhya Pradesh at least yet. But within a builder and project, in fact, we have been applying a bit of pressure on the builders, provided the consumer is willing to accept to swap within projects.
So while we within a project, it is the consumer also has a much better is in a much better frame of mind than if he has to go outside of it. I will give you some instances that I have noticed in the market. We did a lot of study before I called you to this show. If you have bought a project that was in the city area and it was for self-use and it is delayed, and you know that it's going to be delayed for another 2-3 years, there is still completion is 3 years away. And when the consumer asks for a swap, what developers are offering them is peripheral locations which are 5 years down the line. Maybe if you take Noida or Greater Noida, they are offering Yamuna Expressway. Yamuna Expressway is definitely a good location, but it's a location 5 years down the line. And for consumers who have to stay there today and who are already stressed, getting a project in the periphery means nothing. And similarly, if the units which are very expensive and are difficult to move, the consumers are told, I can offer you this unit, now you pay 50 lakhs more. A person who's already stressed and who has been waiting for a long time, if you tell him to pay roughly double the amount. That's not possible for that consumer, right? And this is something I've noticed in developer after developer.
But you know, Jayashree, actually, you have noticed it, and if any developers are doing it, then they are actually trying to make a fast buck. Because actually, what you are saying is in a sense contradictory. What in fact should happen, if a person who has booked a property in a prime location and is being offered as a swap something which is in a periphery or outside that prime location, actually, in order to sweeten that swap, the builder should be saying, now this is going to cost you less. So, well, you booked a property for 50 lakhs, you paid 30 lakhs. Now you take this property, which is only going to cost you 40 lakhs. So you have to pay me only 10 lakhs more. It shouldn't be more unless the person is opting for a larger property in a better area. You see?
When you ask for a completed property, and if there is completed property which is way more expensive, offering that is not a swap. My logic is that's not a swap. Mr. Rajive Kumar, I'd like your views.
Yeah, actually, see, what has happened is that we have, as in any society, we have all kinds of builders. Some of them are extremely concerned about the reputation of the company. And by and large, these are the cases where we get very few complaints from. There are builders who are stressed for various reasons, but they're still trying their bit to complete the projects. So there is a whole spectrum of these folks. But let's say the weights between the demand of a particular buyer and the promoter. What we have been stressing during this time is that we have taken up all the matters where orders as per our record has not been completed and an execution request has been filed online. We have issued notices under 63 to the builders. Now, as you are aware that, and we are hearing these cases on a daily basis. Now you are aware that under section 63, there is a provision that there is on a daily basis, you can put a penalty on the builder for non-compliance, which may go up to 5% of the project cost. So this is one methodology by which this financial equation, which you have been mentioning, either in swapping or not giving a house or not being able, that equation changes completely. But the rates have changed. And we are very hopeful that once we are through with this complete process of section 63, quite a few of the cases which you are mentioning will also get settled.
And for all those consumers who are writing here about coming to the RERA and you're still waiting for your orders to be executed, that's what Mr. Rajive Kumar is talking about. They're trying to figure out to execute such that there are provisions in the law. It's just that you have to exhaust all everything else before you slap a big penalty on the industry.
Right.
As we've been saying, it's important to get your projects completed. As consumers, it's important to understand that that completed project, today a stuck project is only 30% of the cost, the worth of its intrinsic worth. If you complete the project, the unit that you get will be 100% at least of whatever it is worth. And that is the effort, complete the project so that you get the full worth of your project when you get that unit. Sir, I would like to take this argument one step further. When you talk about a developer, you know, for instance, when it goes to NCLT, it's treated at the developer level. But when but at the RERA level, thankfully, you're talking about the project level. In a project, if there are 10 towers, all towers are at different stages. Some just need a lift to be installed and maybe some completion work, and it's ready to be used. There are others which are in probably just the foundation levels. So how do you assess different towers, and how do you make sure that all consumers get the benefit of your advice?
Shall I respond to this, Jayashree? What we are doing, at least in MP, what we have done is, when we take the 3 monthly reports from developers, we take it tower-wise. We take it tower-wise. So if there are towers in 1, 4, 5 towers, we say, okay, you give an overall project completion, but you also tell us tower-wise. Now, what do we consider a completed tower? We consider a tower completed, even if the entire project is not completed, if not only are all the flats in that tower completed, but all the common areas in that tower completed, and all the common services which are required for that tower, whether it is an electricity connection, a water connection, a road connection from the tower to the premises of the project entrance and beyond there, plus the connection to the sewage treatment plant, the STP, you see. So if that tower is livable and it has all these basic facilities, we consider that tower complete, okay, for the purposes of RERA. Why? And why? I know the entire project is not complete and there will be building activity going on in parts of that project. But then, you know, even if you are living in a well-developed area of, you know, Delhi or Mumbai or Bhopal or anywhere, and your neighbor pulled down his house for redevelopment, you cannot say, you know, therefore I cannot live here, therefore the municipality should not allow redevelopment. There are situations when your neighbor is having a building is going on, and yet you can live, because, but when it is a question of tower, if it is a plotted development or individual bungalows, then we say yes, that whole sector at least, which has to be self-contained, needs to be complete. So that this is how we are treating it on a practical angle.
When one tower is complete and there are few units left which have to go on sale, is it possible that the remaining consumers get the first right of refusal for those units instead of the developer selling them in the open market?
What do you mean by remaining consumers? Remaining consumers of other towers?
Other towers.
Actually, when you say get the first right of refusal, you know, this is not a buyer's, this is not a seller's market. Today is a buyer's market. A builder will be only too happy to get this consumer. See, with free RERA, he would not be happy because he's caught a bakra and he's willing to keep that bakra there. But after RERA has come into being, if he doesn't deliver to that person whose tower is half built, he will have to pay compensation to that person. And he'll have to also simultaneously look out for a new buyer for this completed apartment. And it is not a seller's market today, it is still a buyer's market. So any sensible builder will be only too happy to take an allotee from a half-built tower, and if he is willing to take an apartment here, give it to him. But people sometimes have their personal preferences of height and vastu and facing east. Sometimes difficult. But if it's possible, any sensible builder would do it immediately.
But there aren't all sensible builders in the market today, sir.
So what can RERA do? RERA can certainly, if it comes to our knowledge, if some consumer says to us, you know, I'm in a half-built tower, and in this tower, which is completed, there are 4 flats, and I'm willing to take one of those. Okay, he files the case, paying 1,000 rupees in the RERA court. The RERA will call that builder and say, you jolly well give it to him, or we are going to give him such heavy compensation that it will make it unviable for you. So that kind of pressure we can certainly bring on a non-sensible builder. But it has to come to our notice. Some buyer should say, I am willing to take that flat.
And here I've got a lot of buyers logged in. I would actually urge you, try and find solutions which RERAs can facilitate for you. If you feel that your holding power is going away and you can see that tower A and B are completing, go back to your RERA and say, is there some way I can get a completed unit within the same complex? If there are units available, the RERAs will be happy to help. That's what I'm hearing from both of you, right? Mr. Rajive Kumar, do you get a lot of these kind of queries, these kind of requests?
Normally, when people are looking for possession, I mean, for some time, for some people, there are considerations. You know, I had a park facing seventh floor because seventh is lucky for me. You know, those kinds of issues are there. But there are a lot of people who would say that we are looking, we are willing to look at alternative, provided that the point you earlier made, financing and other issues are reasonable. So, in that case, as I had mentioned earlier, we give time. Sometimes we refer it to the conciliator also for reconciling. But taking it a little further, we have recently taken a decision on the lines which you had mentioned for some of our top non-performing builders. Let me use a polite word, uh, and ask them to offer those kinds of units where the order is still to be complied.
But Jayashree, one more point I want to make. If we really want to have swap takeoff, then governments too will have to step in on one issue. And that is they should be willing to allow stamp duty to be transferred. Because in many cases, the original flat, even at booking stage, now, for example, in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, it's not compulsory. Only for 1,000 rupees you can, register your agreement. But in some states, they ask for the entire stamp duty of the construction value, which will go into several lakhs. Now, if this is going to be transferred, the builder says, I'm willing to do it, but stamp duty, the consumer will have to pay again. Now, that becomes into a problem. And government say this is a second transaction, so give us stamp duty again. Now, we will all have to come together. We cannot force government, but governments too will have to look at this and say, in cases where possession has not yet been given to the allottee, and there is a swap because of the inability of the builder to complete a certain project, in those cases, stamp duty should be allowed to be transferable. And that will help a great deal.
So that's an important point, and I'll definitely pick it up at the government levels as well. It's very important because otherwise it's more money, more outflow for the.
And ultimately, the buyer pays that, whether it's 5% or 7% or whatever.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, there's another issue that I'm going to pick up. You are facilitating consumers where 70-80% of consumers come together. You're allowing them to complete their towers. RERA is facilitating that the consumers can complete the work of the building on the units. It could be either the same developer with RERA and project managers and things like that, where the consumer is actively involved. Suppose 70% they are not able to get together. Suppose there is, in many instances, we've noticed that builders throw these red herrings. They plant a lot of consumers, and those customers may not be really original customers. But there is enough dissent created so that all customers cannot get any verdict through. In such cases, if the consumers can't bring 70% together, can you still facilitate the completion of those units?
I think you would have read in the newspapers that in UP we have been making efforts on both sides. One, of course, is after cancellation of registration, moving ahead with the Association of Allottees for completing Section 8, and also permitting an existing builder to complete the project in association with the AOAs under the AGs of UP RERA, wherein it would give confidence to the buyers that if they put further money in the project, it's actually going only to complete their and not elsewhere. And the second case was one where the time period for the project, including the extended period, had expired. So we did long deliberations, got our legal eagles to advise us, and they said that under the provisions of the Act, and as in Neil Kamal's judgment in Maharashtra, RERAs have sufficient authority to let the existing promoter, provided that the AOAs are on board. So we have recently passed one order in one builder's case, and hopefully that should be on the roll. We have also taken more projects on those lines. And the heartening thing is that a lot of people, where they feel that there is a vulnerability here, they're now sending feelers after this experiment. Another matter is where there is builder is absent, he may be in jail, he may be here and there, he is not doing anything on site, and more than 50% of the association folks get together. We have made a policy in this regard. We have consulted the state government as is stipulated in the act, and we have consented to the proposal. So broadly, it says that if there is an association which has more than 50% of the members, that can carry the project forward. Secondly, if that fails, we would ask the local development authority under whose area this project is falling to either themselves or through hiring a third party. So we have now we have all approvals, and we hope that those projects, especially where voters are in the local,
So we had a small technical issue. Your voice was breaking. If you could just repeat that last bit.
What I was saying is that we now have a framework. We have taken action in some cases under Section 8 where the promoters were not forthcoming. And we expect this template now to be used widely, both in association and where the association of allottees are not in a position to the policy says that we will request the local development authority. It could be Noida, Greater Noida, it could be DA, it could be LDA. If they themselves can get it completed, or alternatively, they can get a third party to get the project completed.
And this is I think should be good news for the consumers who have written that. Can there be a formation of a task force for abandoned projects which have been delayed for more than 5 years with buyer associations? Is this
right?
UP RERA, sir, or as all the RERA authorities are already in a forum, can this be extended to other RERAs as well?
Jayashree, we have been doing this in Madhya Pradesh, but first let me say that it's not such an easy thing to do. I will give you two examples in Madhya Pradesh. One example where without having to invoke Section 7 and Section 8, that is revocation of the registration, we have been able to, using the same builder who was in jail for several years and this and that, anyway, but it's a huge project of more than 300 crores in Indore. But what we did was get the builder out, use the builder, but involve the association of allottees in such a way that instead of setting aside just 70% of the fund for construction, 100% of the funds would be set aside. So that any allottee who paid an additional amount would not feel that now the builder is going to further siphon away even 30% of that. No, 100% will be used for completion. Allottees also accepted that their demands for compensation would be kept on hold till the entire project is completed. And then depending on the profit generated, then the demand for compensation would be heard. Okay. RERA also sacrificed a little bit in the sense that because the fellow was in jail, he did not register his project under Section 3. And so because of late registration of the project, a certain fine had to be paid, late fee had to be paid. We sacrificed that late fee. We also said, like allottees, we will take the late fee from the profits when they are generated. We will only take the basic fee for registration. And then we set up a committee by some retired engineer-in-chief of the government, on a private, as a technical commissioner from RERA, who once a month takes a meeting on site with representatives, and something is going ahead. But we have now faced a roadblock. I am not naming the project or the person or the financial institution, But the financial institution has taken an objection, saying that, we have a first lien on this, though the loan taken from the financial institution is equivalent to only about 10% of the value of the entire project. But because of that loan, now that financial institution, which is headquartered in another state, is bringing a court order and saying, no, you can't do this and no, you can't do that. So that also has to be sorted out. We are in the process of trying to sort this out. Otherwise, that will come in, again, the whole thing which had begun moving. And as you say, some towers were even 90% complete, 95%. They only required the finishing touch. That may face problems. Another project, we actually, under Section 7, we had to revoke the registration. But in this case, there was no association of allottees coming forward.
Yeah.
And, to take it up. So, like Rajiv is saying, we identified a local development authority, but Section 8 of the Act says that, I don't know, in UP, perhaps government has already taken an in-principle decision. That is not so in Madhya Pradesh. So, we had to follow Section 8, where before we give it to any other agency other than Association of Allottees, it has got to go through the government. We have to consult the government. So, we've sent that to the government and with our recommendations, but that development authority also has certain reservations about taking up the project because of the legal lacunae. They are saying, how will we transfer, the property to the allottee? Who will sign the registration deed? The properties and all that is still in the previous builder's name. And I don't think the RERA Act makes it very clear that the basic ownership of the assets will also transfer. You see, so that is also a bit of a legal lacuna.
Yeah.
Is the project going with its assets and liabilities? And if they're taking up the liabilities, then will all the creditors come to the new allottee? But if the new developer, if the new developer is going to take the liabilities, they also should get the ownership of the assets. But that is not clear in the RERA Act also.
So are you trying to find this problem if you are facing this problem, I'm sure a lot of RERA authorities around the country will also face similar problems. So as an association, as a forum, are you picking up these issues and do these come up for resolution?
Rajiv is the president of our association at the moment. I'm the vice president. But of course, we have discussed this. I mean, Rajiv will be able to tell you more as the president. We have discussed this, and we are in the process of, making certain recommendations to government for amendment of the Act. And I suppose this will find a place in those recommendations because clarity is needed on this issue also. Otherwise, there will be endless litigation on this matter.
Absolutely. And the role of the lender is actually something that I would like you to comment on, because the lender was there. The lender was there in the committees. He knew what was happening in the project. The consumer was not. The consumer is a recent entrant into it. The lender today, if he stands up and says that, look, mine is the first right, why didn't you protect your right so long? And that's what the consumer's argument today is. When you lent to me on a retail finance, when you lent to the project on a project finance, and you were part of that entire process, how did you let this happen?
See, Jayashree, there's also one more important point, which is not only, that is just an argument which nobody will accept, but even the NCLT or even the lender, if we are able to arrive at another legal provision, which says that the stay on the project would be only to the extent of the value of the loan taken. That would also help. Now, for example, if somebody goes to NCLT because he has lent 30 crores to a project, and then you get a stay saying nothing will happen when the project is worth 300 crores. If it is 30 crores, then you can reserve so many flats worth there. Or if there's extra land attached to the project, like in this particular case, Indore, you can take that land worth 30 crores or whatever. But to bring a whole project to just because in your agreement, they say that your lien is on that. At that time, they don't value this separately. Because when you take a loan for a project, they say the whole project is mortgaged. They don't say, okay, only 20 flats of the project will be mortgaged or whatever. Now, that is something which we will have to find out, and that is something which can easily and valuably be done. But this will require a discussion with the NCLT and also, I suppose, with the finance ministry or the RBI, which controls financial institutions.
Has that process begun? Sir, Mr. Rajive Kumar, as chairman of this entire forum, the president of this forum, how is it? These are issues. These are definite issues that need resolution and need resolutions fast. What is the status?
Actually, I entirely agree with my esteemed vice chairman for this forum, which is Mr. Disa, and also the chairman designate whenever the chair changes. See, the point is that these matters have all been discussed. You may recall that RERA had this privilege of hosting the first national RERA conclave in Lucknow in November last year. And there was a major discussion on the legal issues, and certain recommendations had come out, including the ones we have just been discussing. Those recommendations were forwarded to Government of India for their consideration. We have this forum again. This note has been under circulation, and we hope that with some conclusive recommendations in August, not only about the legal issues, but a lot of, though I must say that, different RERAs in the country are on different tracks. There are some who are just starting off, and there are some who are moving at the bullet train speed. So with that perspective, the kind of issues which are coming up when you are at the stage, and the kind of issues which are confronting my friend, say in Maharashtra, or with us in the NCR region especially, are probably very different from our colleagues who are, say, in Hyderabad or Chennai, though established, but they're probably the kind of crisis which one has been trying to look at for especially the ongoing projects may not be there. So when you have a large forum, sometimes you only get the least common multiple as the outcome. We are trying to maximize that.
So one more, the consumers have picked up one more issue, and that is when the RERA is actually working with the consumers on the project and the developers, and it's going through to completion. Then suddenly somebody goes, maybe a lender goes to the NCLT, and what was almost at resolution point gets off the rails. Is there some way this can be addressed? Because this was an issue that you dealt with in Lucknow. You did raise it in Lucknow. So is this something that is being hit?
Actually, there is, I would say, a fundamental framework issue here. And the framework is that the general principle is that if you have a specialized forum for a particular sector, then prima facie and in first go, that should be the port of first call as far as that sectoral issues are concerned. This is true for TARI, this is true for the regulator, this is true for a lot of other regulators. Now, as far as RERA Act is concerned, because we have concurrently the jurisdiction of the Consumer Forum also, we also have a concurrent jurisdiction of NCLT, and the Honorable Supreme Court has said that all the three should work harmoniously. But in case they fail to act harmoniously, then NCLT will win. So that's what the legal position is today. And therefore, this position, sorry, I just completed half. So this position, either we take a similar call on the legal side, which is for all other regulators, or in the interim, we try to follow the directives completely of the Honorable Supreme Court. And we are in touch with a lot of these IRPs and RPs for individual projects. But the issues which can be comprehensively dealt with by RERA, uh, there is always a possibility that some wise person will decide at the last moment to go to other forums, and that is not preventable.
Actually, this is what I was going to ask you. Actually in touch with NCLT RPs and IRPs so that you can at least the project does not need to get off the rails. Together, you can get it see it through.
I find a lot of RPs and IRPs are fairly enlightened people, and they also see value in coordinating with RERA. So that's a good sign.
And one last issue now I'm going to raise, and this is that when you give an order, there are many developers who say, "हाँ, ठीक है, recovery certificate है तो क्या हुआ, चालान है तो क्या हुआ, let's see how it goes." And consumers feel that there is a delay in execution. Yeah, this has been a perennial problem since the RERA was started. That you do give orders, that execution of orders have not been as vibrant as they should be. Have we seen any change? What is your message to consumers?
Jayashree, in Madhya Pradesh, we made some legal changes in the sense that we modified our rules. We sent the proposal to the government. The government very kindly accepted the proposal. And our rules were modified to also provide for the appointment of an execution officer, like the adjudication officer, who would be a retired district judge. And he would be appointed on the same basis that is appointed by RERA taking out an advertisement, etc., like the AO is appointed, and he would sit in the RERA office. So, and we created a court for him. So we have an execution officer in place, and recently we also have an execution assistant in,
who is a retired person who has dealt with these matters of recovery earlier, either retired tehsildar or a retired assistant engineer of the electricity authority, etc. And we have given him a staff, and he has been working for the past 3 weeks or so, 1 month or so, and I would say with positive results, because he is able to go on site, and what we had expected the collectors to do for recovery as arrears of land revenue and other things, which unfortunately, because of work pressure and lots of other priorities, etc., was not getting done, is now perhaps has got a fillip, which doesn't mean the problem has been solved 100%, but there is an improvement in execution too.
Will this serve as a model for other RERAs? Can it be invoked as a model?
I suppose so. I mean, it's there, and that is why we have our All India Forum to exchange, views on best practices. And then in a modified form, each state does, they learn from each other, and we do what can be done.
Mr. Rajive Kumar, what is the status in UP?
I think I had briefly touched upon this issue. Actually, our feeling before this COVID hit us was that there is some marginal improvement in the sector.
Right.
And as I had mentioned earlier, part of the issue is not of viability, but of liquidity. And that is something which is impacting the completion of the project, that is also impacting the compliance issues, both in terms of recovery and delivering a product which is completed after obtaining a OC or CC. So what we have been doing is that we have taken up all the cases of where our record shows that the compliance has not been done. What we have discovered during our discussion on the compliance is that there are 4 or 5 different kinds of these matters. One is that there is a builder who claims that he has already offered the possession 7 months ago, and there is a dispute about how much liability was there to be paid and how much he has added or padded up or whatever, and that dispute is not getting resolved. So that is where I think we have been referring these matters to our conciliator, because somebody needs to sit with a calculator and see the accounts and see what the agreement is, which in a court may not be, or that kind of setting may not be feasible. Second is that there are some cases where stay has been obtained after depositing the money in the appellate tribunal. So that was not on record, and there are some cases like that. The third category of cases is where the builder has actually not been able to complete the project, and he's saying, give me 2 months, I'll be able to deliver the project. And in many cases, the buyers are also willing to wait for 2-3 months so that they get a house. And that leaves us with the residual where, the builder has not been able to perform. So there we have, apart from taking other action where issuance of recovery certificate, etc. is concerned, that is being done in parallel, but we are also moving under section 63 to impose a penalty so that it can act as a deterrent. However, in the present, I am told by my legal team that there is a stay order by the Honorable High Court whereby they have in a generic order directed that coercive action should not be taken. This stay was till 31st July, but on 30th, this has been extended till 31st August. So for the state of UP, there is a generic kind of restriction on the coercive actions. So that is a bit of an issue, but for 10 largest non-performance, we are taking all measures available in the Act to ensure that the compliance rates improve, including not permitting them to register new projects till they perform.
Thank you both of you for this freewheeling RERA discussion. Our MBTV RERA dialogues have only just begun. We have been talking about the law. We have been talking to you guys for the past so many, a year and a half almost, we have been doing this. And I would like to actually appeal to all the consumers who have been posting their queries that while it's important to raise your queries, fight to win, not to lose. And you can only win if you can get that unit that you have paid for, or a unit in lieu of what you've paid for. But at the end of the day, what we have understood is that the RERA regulators are working within the framework of the law to try and find solutions. And we will keep bringing your perspective to the regulators. And I'm so glad that the regulators respond so positively.
Thanks a lot. It has always been a learning experience to be on your show, Jayashree. Thanks once again. And also through you, all the listeners, please stay safe and all the best.
Thank you so much, Jayashree. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Thank you so much.